Today we're talking to Samuel Ross, but first, let's rewind. On Monday, we went to the English Forest with Riccardo Tisci and Burberry.
Fashion is an emotion. Today, fashion, it is about dream, but at the same time, it's about how a collection is constructed. It was a love story between a mermaid and a shark, because I'm obsessed with everything that's come from like animal world and nature world, but as well, everything is mythologic. And then there was a lot of element from the lighthouse keeper, which is typical of England. And then we brought the mermaid and the sharks, let's say, in the forest, because we wanted this contrast with the freedom. The story behind the show, it came from like what happened in the last 7 months in the world. And start saying, okay, fine, we cannot stop, and let's be creative, and let's not lose the emotion, the romanticism to this beautiful storytelling. So this time I went back to stay in my house with my mom for 3 months, which is like very similar of this landscape. Day by day, of course, I stopped smoking after 20 years during the lockdown. I spent time with my mom, but then I felt like I start missing going out and be free and see people.
Just walk normally, but slow.
One of the the artists I really respect is Anne.
Riccardo invited me to do this show. I haven't done something like this before.
So we done a few meetings.
We spoke about it, and then our thoughts somehow developed.
And then we were listening to music and start dreaming.
And we ended up in the woods.
And work is all about statement and element of youth.
His collection and my vision for the show, it was really fitting. The music that Eliza wrote, I think was really important for the show. Eliza decided on those pieces that you wouldn't necessarily expect in a fashion show. I very much envisioned to change the idea of the model walking the show. Models would become audience in somewhat way, and that if I would make a show, I would make a show also for them. And so I combined the circle with a stage to have both of these way of looking at something.
Ring is a very a fantastic energetic move. People when they walk in a ring is generating very good energy. So the idea was feeling so small, claustrophobic, changing yourself, and then open the door and then being out here, and that's what the show was. And this is a difficult moment. So this is a very beautiful a future, a message to the future and a positivity.
There's a story of hope that is told that was really important to me somehow to point out.
It felt really interesting, very strange. Of course, I missed all the fashion world and I missed the adrenaline of when the show is finished. But today, everybody have a telephone, everybody have a computer, everybody can watch from that. It's a quite democratic way to show to the world and to include people. I wish all the world was here and see it, because the emotion, it was intense, very beautiful.
And we're back. On Wednesday, we met 3 visionary designers who are trailblazing sustainability in fashion.
Every day we wake up and things like the climate crisis are a daily reality. And I thought, well, what are you doing, Phoebe? We're in a crisis, we're in an emergency. Like, what are you actually doing?
The industry will change as long as there's still space for like younger voices and designers to keep like talking about things, because otherwise it's really easy to go back to status quo.
Your work is sort of something that I think you should always be learning from, and you should always be reassessing. If you buy art, or if you speak to an artist, or if you speak to a maker, you understand kind of the world that they're in and what they're making and what goes into it. I think clothes should be a bit more like that.
My realisation was to actively try and be part of the solution. We just started with very simple things like eliminating our plastic coat hangers. That felt like such a victory as a team that it became quite, it perpetuated the energy to try and find the next thing and the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. We're in London, it's a very creative city. So we reached out to as many different studios and designers that we knew to see if they would be willing to sell or pass on any excess or dead stock or overstock fabric that they had left in their studios. And it was really logistically difficult because I was having to design the collection in response to the materials that were coming in. So we shot my mother, who is wearing a piece today, which was a quilted textile. And this piece was, I suppose, a protective cocoon. All the edges of the pattern meet edge to edge and they can fill the whole width of the fabric. So you really utilise everything that you have in the material, because it is a very precious resource when you think about how much water and carbon and energy and person power that is used to make them. So even if they're a dead stock or a surplus fabric, we try and really respect it as a resource.
My brand Alawalia is primarily menswear. From the beginning, I've always wanted to make it a brand that works really positively, whether that's with people or the planet. I was studying for my MA menswear at Westminster Uni, and then I found out about Panipat, which is the global capital of recycling clothing in the world, and that's in India. And I took my camera and I went there. The amount of clothing that people, from all around the world that we kind of forget about. And I think once I saw that and saw the sheer volume of like what we discard, I think there was no going back after that. We tried to work with pre-existing materials. I hope that the idea of having something that no one else has got exactly the same as you encourages people to hold on to it. And you can see here again on the back, like you get these like little details that come, that's actually a pocket flap that's come from a jacket that we used to make this jacket. So I'm Indian and I'm Nigerian and I was born in London. In June, I released a book called Jalebi, and that was done in collaboration with Lawrence Ellis. It's centred around Southall, so it's an area in northwest London that's the first and biggest Punjabi Indian community in the UK. And I visited there as a kid all the time. So many people come to these areas because they are trying to make a better life for themselves, for their family, but actually they're not always treated with so much respect, and they also have quite a difficult time. Where we grow the materials to make cotton, where we dump our rubbish, it's never in the West. It's always in Africa and Asia, and it's always someone else's problem. As the industry moves forward and we keep having conversations around sustainability, to make sure that we're like including people into that equation.
It's working very much outside of the system that is in place for you. But we also kind of have to show within it so that people actually see it. My graduate collection, I know I had lots of paint left over, and a lot of it was painted because my dad had lost his job as a painter and decorator, so I used the paint that was left over. That's just kind of how I wanted to make things, and I've always liked that challenge. You produce a lot less, but you get to produce the things that maybe you would rather produce. My friend Nishant, who's in Tamil Nadu in India, established this incredible regenerative farm. It's really a way of looking at clothes and of living and of making and of consuming that is supportive of the environment and the people within it. That's from weavers and dyers to farmers, and they have an expertise that hasn't been, I guess, written down. We were developing textiles for Oshadi, and I was able to develop amazing organic cottons and learn about plant-based dyes. I never used leather until a company that I worked with was like, we've got all this leather, do you want the leather to do something with? And it's mainly scrap, and that's how we're making this patchwork and things. The collection we just made was sort of all through lockdown. you know, we worked with a really amazing casting and styling team, and then we kind of made this sort of responsive film where we all just arrived on this really big set and responded to the clothes that we've made. I think it's really beautiful, but also like equally funny, and feels a bit anxious and feels a bit weird, and that feels like the right thing to be making now, because I think everyone shares those feelings, I guess. I think even like the change that I can make as a sustainable business, because it's like cautiously small scale, that's the way I want it. But the difference really happens when, I guess, big brands start applying it. And you see that now with like the work that we did with Eco now for years, and now Prada are taking it and making it, you know, and that's like exactly the best thing that could happen. It always comes from really young designers introducing the idea and taking the risk.
You never know where one step of change will take you.
I do think that there are people that are recognising that there's better ways to shop.
You can only really have hope because the generation coming after us from schools and from, you know, younger designers is that everyone wants a change.
What's up, everybody? It's Paloma Elsesser here again with Good Morning Vogue. Today, we'll be talking to the designer Samuel Ross. He's a former assistant of Virgil Abloh, but most importantly, he's redefining high fashion and affecting social change with his brand, A Cold Wall. Not to mention, he donated his BFC New Gen sponsorship coin to his ex-intern, literal legend. Samuel also recently set up an initiative distributing grants to Black-owned businesses and is ushering in a new generation of Black creatives in London.
There's been one view of Britishness that's been allowed, and my job is to evolve that. My name is Samuel Ross. Cold Wall is a luxury menswear brand that I founded, self-funded in 2015. I also run an industrial design practice, and my work's become quite known for taking architectural forms, brutalism, civil rights, and combining those into articulate garments that represent the 21st century. I was born in Brixton, which is of course the heartbeat of the Black civil rights movement in the UK.
The presence of the police within the area at the present time.
My mother is a sociology and psychology lecturer at Northampton University and a painter. My father holds a MA in fine arts from CSM and was also a painter. I moved out of Brixton when I was a child. All my family stayed there. I became the cousin in the countryside who moved up north. So there was a constant ebb and flow between cultural influences, between music, between, you know, almost like code switching to a certain degree with language. I've had my head kicked in by skinheads. I've had a series of altercations with like violent racists, specifically between the age of like 14 up to like 18, because growing up outside of London is very different. My start in fashion, it really began in the projects selling counterfeit sportswear, Nike, Adidas, people coming to my house to do fittings. So I became quite known for being the person to go to if you wanted something slightly more forward-thinking with garments, and that's how I started. A year after graduating as a product and graphic designer from my 9-to-5 commercial job, I quickly realized that working in a commercial environment wasn't going to be enough for me, and I needed more. I started operating as a videographer. I started operating as a street artist in Leicester as well, pasting artworks up at night. I tried to reach out to Virgil through every single channel imaginable, didn't have any luck, but by chance he happened to find my Instagram account. After being like a general assistant, I moved up to being his first assistant, and we worked for years. My entry into fashion wasn't from like an influencer perspective, it was literally based on skill set and hard work. And that's what really resonated with a lot of people, which has opened a lot of doors, just being very focused on the work. So for SS21, the feeling of the collection is this balance between still carrying a lot of social messaging, but listening to the fact that people are really working from home and that the idea of the office is radically changing. So the lounge knit is a heavyweight, oversized knitwear piece that has 2 asymmetric jacquard blocks, one in a slate green and one in a heather grey. And as you can see, we've taken our own spin on having these rectangular shapes kind of interlay and tell an architectural story. We spent a lot of time working on a asymmetrical gilet, which has a series of hidden closures and magnetic closures. A cold wall quickly became known for its asymmetry, and that was really informed by this idea of being atypical and being other in terms of the black existence and black consciousness in 21st century sociopolitics. My job in luxury fashion is to make sure that the garments and the messaging is just as good as any other house that is going out there, which is why I often don't explicitly say black on the front of my work. Black art doesn't have to show a black face for it to be black. And I think that's a really important point here, moving past a apologetic way to a certain degree of designing and communicating what blackness is. It doesn't need to answer to anyone, nor does it need to explain itself. This idea of resurfacing garments, updating garments at different station points, which we started to trial with SP1, but also only selling people trims and only selling people aspects of hardware, completely removes this idea of having to reproduce garments again. So it just makes a lot more sense to kind of just test different ways and how fashion can engage. Current idea of IP is very Victorian, and in reality it doesn't work in like the 4D reality we live in at this point. I guess when real things happen, you have to respond in a way which is just real. The grant scheme that I put together with A Cold Wall is really about supporting young black businesses and young black artists. There was no real visibility on what was happening in regards to like a black agricultural movement, in terms of black financial tech, in terms of black philosophy for the 21st century. There are individuals doing this, but there needs to be more visibility. We still haven't got there yet. We also put together a fund scheme for the Black Lives Matter movement in North America to assist with the civil rights work that needs to be done. A brand cannot trade me or you a commodity and not have a value system. That's gone for good, as it should be. A Cold Wall has intentions to kind of move into this much more human and social space whilst retaining its luxury position. It doesn't mean we're going to give up on capitalism, because socialism isn't a political system anyway, it's a belief system, and I still think that there are loads of benefits to a free trade market. I want to keep A Cold Wall in that, but I do want to start looking at a much more socialist spectrum to the brand coming forth for the long term.
That's a wrap on London, but be sure to come back next week when we're headed to Milano.